Hello, everybody. My name is Heather Fromack, and I am the Program Manager for HSLDA's Educational Consultants. And as you can imagine, we've been receiving a lot of questions since schools have shut down, and we want to be here for you. We have curated some of the most common questions that we've gotten, and we're going to be addressing those. But we also want you to participate with us today, as always, on our Facebook Live. So please let us know where you're watching from. Please feel free to throw in any questions that are on your mind. We'll do our best to address those. We really want to help you navigate this very unique season of life. And so today we have an awesome group of guests that I'm really excited to talk to, and I think will be so helpful to you. Today, joining us, we have HSLDA staff attorney, TJ Schmidt, who is also a homeschooling dad and was homeschooled himself. So this is going to be a great opportunity to get some insights for dads. And we also have two veteran homeschooling moms. We have Jamie Metzger, who recently wrote a fantastic article about homeschooling in the Federalist. And we have Samantha Spitzer, who was recently featured in the Journal. So we have very famous homeschoolers here with us today and very insightful people who are going to give you some great insights. So first, let's start with TJ. TJ, could you just introduce yourself and tell everybody just a little bit about your homeschooling background?
Sure. Well, Heather, was glad to be here and to be participating in this Facebook Live event. I'm one of the staff attorneys here at HSLDA, and I've been here almost 18 years. Just to tell a little bit about my history, my parents began homeschooling me back in 1983, coincidentally the same year that HSLDA started. We were homeschooling in northern Vermont, and I was homeschooled almost all of my life from second grade on. And my wife and I, or I should say primarily my wife, is homeschooling our 7 kids. And you know, there's challenges every day, but we're certainly thankful that we have the opportunity to be able to educate our children at home.
That's awesome. That's really is ironic that you started homeschooling right when HSLDA started. So you'll have some great insights. I know normally you're not homeschooling, and the we of homeschooling is often the same kind of we that says, we had a baby or we are pregnant, yeah, well, we understand the kids too, but it's usually the mom that's pulling that together. And we also have Samantha Spitzer, and so she's from West Virginia, a big leader in the homeschooling community there. Samantha, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have been homeschooling since 2005. I was a music teacher in Berkeley County for about a dozen years. I graduated from Shepherd, and then I got my master's with WVU. And after my first daughter was born, I really felt God calling me to say, you know what, you've got a chance to be here with your child, be with your child. And it was a hard decision to make, but then again, it was also a really easy decision for me to make. Be able to stay home, and we've been able to make it happen. And I have 2 other daughters as well. So my oldest is now at Blue Ridge and working with a criminal justice degree. My other 2 kids are in 6th and 8th grades. And so, we stay very busy. I sometimes, usually always, have other children here at Spitzer Academy as well. And so they come in and join us all the time. And so we keep very, very busy.
You hearken to some of the community that homeschoolers really rely on. And I don't know that that's always well known by the public, that even though, yes, our traditional schooling environment hasn't changed much with this current situation, our community support has definitely been impacted as well.
Absolutely has.
So we're being empathetic from that perspective. So thank you for that. I can't wait to hear some of your thoughts. And then we also have Jamie Metzger, who wrote an article in the Federalist that we're kind of used today as a guideline for our discussion, but we're also going to be utilizing some of the most common questions. So Jamie, can you tell us about yourself and maybe transition to some of the most common questions you've been hearing, Jamie?
Okay. Well, like TJ, I am also a 2nd generation homeschooler. So I was homeschooled myself all the way through K through 12. And for me, that's what I know. I've been homeschooling my 4 daughters it's hard to track when it began, but at least 13 years formally. My oldest is in her senior year, about to graduate. And then my rest of my kids are in 11th, 8th, and 7th. It changes all the time. Homeschoolers aren't very good at knowing what.
I was just going to say, okay,
Always,
so that's the
always.
face. That's the face all homeschoolers make when you ask them what grade their kids are in. Like, let me think about it.
Exactly.
For math, it's 5th grade. For writing, it's 7th grade. Yeah. Okay,
That's
so we get the big idea. So some of the most urgent questions we've gotten so far, Jamie, is can you homeschool short term, or does it have to be a long-term commitment? So let's hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the points that I started out with in my piece, is that you shouldn't see this bizarre situation as typical of homeschooling. This is not your normal homeschooling experience. Normally, you'd have at least a little bit of time to plan out your year and to design your own curriculum. I imagine a lot of parents are not really in charge in terms of what curriculum, if they had assignments sent home from the school, they're implementing somebody else's plan, and that's difficult to do. It also happened at the drop of the hat. Another major factor that you pointed out is the social isolation. That is, contrary to myth, that is not how we live as homeschoolers.
Exactly right.
We don't live in a little bubble. We have our society. So this is hard on everybody. So give yourself a lot of grace for that, and don't see it as a typical homeschool experience. You're going to want to design it as something that's a little different, short term. But that said, you absolutely can do it. I just think you have to come at it from a slightly different angle. And one of the things that I talk about in my piece, I think that's important to understand from the get-go, is that you don't have to don't think about doing 8 hours of direct instruction per day.
No.
The big secret of homeschooling, especially for little kids and younger grades, is that it does not take very long. 1.5, 2 hours a day on direct instruction, maybe the first 3 grades, I would say.
Right.
You're doing a lot of one-on-one. You're eliminating a lot of in-between times that classrooms have to have, and so it really doesn't take a lot of time. And I always forget that that's a surprise to people, because homeschooling is what I've always known.
Right.
In fact, I just had a Facebook friend message me yesterday and said, if I had known that it only took me 2 hours, I would have homeschooled before now. And I was like, oh, I should have told you that.
Heather, I've had lots of people say the same thing to me. And I tell them, first of all, you gotta remember that you have school class sizes that are 25 average.
Yes.
So
Right.
really, your kid's only answering 1 every 25 questions. So they're off the other time. When we're homeschooling, they have to know everything 100%. They're going through it all. They're answering every question. And that's why it takes so much a quicker time period, because you are really concentrating on it, and it's not spread out waiting to get around to everybody. So
Right.
or even 7 on 1, depending on how many kids you have, can make a big difference.
That's right. And I think you bring up in your piece, and also even as both of you are speaking, you bring up the difference between, or the distinction between really academic subjects. And in your piece, Jamie, you talk about more of a mindset of learning. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that's really helpful when you think about this season, and even about homeschooling in general, is that yes, we need to be attentive to those academic subjects. We've had a lot of questions that say, well, how many days a week do I need to do math? Or how many days a week do I need to do all the subjects? And I think when you think of it in terms of academic subjects versus a learning mindset, that can help balance out your expectations for the day. Teaching math, writing, grammar, and spelling does not take but a couple hours a day.
Right.
And so so that kind of segues into some of that idea that you said about a mindset of learning, a lifestyle of learning. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I think that's especially true right now with this short-term bizarre situation that we're all dealing with. Is this is a gift of however many months. I know some states have already said we're done for the whole school year.
Yeah.
But that's still, what, 3 months that you're going to get. And I just think this is such a unique period of time that it would be a shame to waste it doing the exact same thing when it's such a unique opportunity to do something very different. And yeah, I mean, every homeschooler knows that the kind of the secret sauce of home education is that you are integrating learning with life. And I just gave a couple ideas to get people started thinking about it. One of the ideas is something from my family, which is one year we were doing our science book. The whole year was on birds and wing. Okay. And so we set up a bird feeder outside our kitchen window, and we got a bird manual, and we would, document which birds were coming. And I mean, that started really a lifestyle for my kids of observing wildlife. We all loved it. I still put that bird feeder up every winter because it's like my happy thing.
Yes.
It's all gray and barren outside. That's just one example. You can be, you can be cooking with your kids, making cookies, and tell them to double the recipe. And that's a wonderful applied math experience that they will remember. Any way that you can integrate learning into their life, I think one thing to keep in mind is that you don't need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the subject, and they don't need to take away, everything there is to know on this subject. You're lighting a fire. You're not filling a bucket.
That's right.
You want them to remember it and get excited about what they're learning. And a lot of times then they will drive their education on that subject. They'll go learn more on the subjects that really make them come alive. And so I think especially, I know I've heard from some of my friends that their kids are in public school and the schools have given them a number of hours per day that they're expecting. I would be really creative on how to apply that if it were me. I'm a little rebellious anyway, but I mean, I would do the cookies and the math and call that a half hour of academics. Absolutely. I would be creative about that and not bound to making people sit in chairs. This is not school at home. This is something totally different.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I would say is, I think we're all talking about this is a really unique time in history that we're seeing so many families with their children at home, and they're doing the homeschooling. And as I think, Jamie and Samantha have both mentioned, all of us are getting a bunch of these questions. And some states are being very proactive, and they're sending lessons home. One of the things that I'm helping parents distinguish is whether they're going to be focusing on, kind of the philosophy of homeschooling, or whether they're going to legally begin to homeschool and report. Just because you're home doesn't necessarily mean that you have to legally begin homeschooling in your state. And so I think that's a unique question that each family is going to deal with. And maybe this is an opportunity for you to determine and try out homeschooling, see how you like it. And if you want to, formally stand up and say, I'm identifying with a homeschooling community, I'm going to be officially homeschooling, then we can help you in navigating what you're actually required to do. But I think for most parents, you're not going to have to worry about that at the moment. And getting also to one of the other, comments that Jamie and Samantha both mentioned about the hours. Most states, when you're talking about the homeschooling law, they do often require you to do days or sometimes even hours, but almost universally, and I can't say for every state, but almost universally, they recognize and acknowledge that homeschooling can take less time than traditional school. One example that I always like to use is homebound instruction, which is different from homeschooling, but homebound instruction in New York State legally can be done in 2 hours a week.
Wow.
So I mean,
wait. 2 hours a week?
2 hours to what, the public school is doing. Now, obviously the homeschooling community would need to do the substantial equivalent of a certain amount of hours, but
wow.
But I think there's a lot of flexibility that parents, should recognize. And I think the ideas that Samantha and Jamie have brought up are really good ones to think about homeschooling as a way of life. And I think for all of us, and what's impacted all of us really positively.
Right.
And I love, go ahead, Samantha.
I was going to say, and I'm almost sad for the public school students that have to deal with the stack of worksheets that they have to do, because that's all they got. is worksheets. And if you've told my kids to tell you, ask them what's something that they remember of things that we've done, it's not the worksheets, it's the projects, it's the hands-on stuff. It's, yeah, we read about Stonehenge, but when we really went outside and we gathered a whole bunch of boxes and recreated Stonehenge, and then yes, we actually ate popsicles inside Stonehenge, and then we burned it down. It was a lot of fun. And remember about Stonehenge. And it's the connections that we're making with our kids that makes it something that's real to them, and makes it so much more important. And yes, they do retain even more because of the activities that are going on.
So I love what you're suggesting, all of you here, is that this is a unique window of time. No matter what people decide to do, whether they decide to continue homeschooling or this is just a brief moment on the blip of the family screen,
Right.
this is a chance for you to impart family identity, family memories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, I totally resonate with you, Jamie. I love birds. And so we've done the bird feeder. Yes, Samantha too. We have the bird feeder. We have the book, probably the same book you have from Costco, right there in front of the bird feeder. And so now it is such a huge family thing to be driving through and go, oh my gosh, look at that nuthatch. Or look at, and even take it to the next level. Can you identify the sound of that bird? Which song is that? That's a part of our family identity now.
Right.
Because we've had that moment. You've got burning down Stonehenge, which sounds like a whole blog post to me. Okay, burning down Stonehenge. But that's still, you know, a way for you to embrace this moment.
Right.
Maybe you have to get those worksheets done. That's okay. But it's not going to take all day.
Exactly.
So enjoy sharing what your family really cares about as a part of your mindset of learning here. So let's keep going on here with scheduling. We've had a lot of questions about scheduling. Some people love a schedule. Some people are really stressed out without a schedule. And other people are like, yes, sleeping in, jammies all day, binge watching Lord of the Rings, you know. So what kind of input would you give about scheduling, Jamie? We'll start with you.
Oh goodness, I'm not the person to. I'm definitely in the latter category. A little bit more. I often will make myself a schedule. I tell you when I had to really use schedules is when I had 4 small children and I had to figure out how to. I was going to instruct the older 2 while the younger 2 were napping or some other way. So it was like every school year was like a puzzle. Like I had to
it is.
put all
That's
the
a good
pieces in
analogy.
place.
Oh, yes.
And so I really did have a much more regimented schedule then. Now it's more of a loose outline and everything's adjusted 3 hours later. I have teenagers who like to sleep in. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be trial and error. You have to find what works for your family. I think it's good to get ideas from seasoned homeschoolers. I've seen a lot of people putting their schedules out. But just don't be married to that. Don't feel like if that doesn't work for you that you have failed. Just keep working at it until you find your sweet spot. And our sweet spot is like a loose plan. Like generally in the morning we do this and this and this, but it's not like, okay, 10:30, timer goes off and we
Right.
So that's how my family.
This morning was a perfect example. I had 3 kids here. 2 of them slept in. I'm not going to tell you what time they actually got up, but the other one got up. She decided to do 7 days worth of reading comprehension this morning. I don't know where that came from.
Okay.
Worked on 2 lessons in history, took a history test, and then asked if she could bake chocolate chip cookies. She used my mother's recipe. I just had one right before we started this. They are as good as my mother's. I take the reading comprehension just worked.
That's mean. It's really not nice for you to say that because you're way too far away from me. I cannot get a cookie. Plus, social distancing, I wouldn't be allowed to come to your house to get a cookie.
That's right. We can leave a baggie outside in the driveway.
Yes.
But I'm kind of in the same agreement with Jamie. It is awesome to make a schedule. I love schedules. If I could check every box off every day, it just makes me happy. The problem is I can spend a lot of time making these pretty schedules and are just shot away really quickly because my kids have their own way of doing things. They like to be able to check off and mark things off. So I don't give them a time period anymore, because there are days when math might take an hour, other days when it may only take 15 minutes.
Right.
It all in the end. So I've kind of given it a little bit more lighter, relaxed scheduling style. And I actually see my kids really come up and they're marking things out every day, and they really do better that way. But I think everybody, like you said, needs to try, and don't feel like you failed because it didn't work with the pretty schedule that you made up.
Yes, and I think that suggests a really good balance, because both of you have talked about the need for a plan. You do need to plan. And that's one of the things I encourage people to do before you even really start to worry about, are we going to homeschool or not? Take some time and just plan the basics. So if you have to plan something, you need to keep up with math. You should keep up with reading, grammar, spelling. And then after that, unless I'm missing something, ladies and TJ, the rest can just be this lifestyle learning that you're enjoying. So you can have both. You can have that planned, what is the best time of day for us to make sure we get these basics accomplished? And then the rest of the day can be more that free-flowing kind of thing. TJ, do you have anything to add to that as a dad?
Well, yeah, so one of the things that I think both Jamie and Samantha kind of hit on is it really depends on the time of life and the age of your children. Because I think when you have younger children, or if you have several of them that are different ages, you will need to maybe plan out for you as a parent on what you're intending. But one of the things that I tell my wife all the time is, we have the flexibility to modify that plan or to change from that plan. We're not bound by that plan. The other thing I think that Samantha mentioned is the fact that you can allow your children to take ownership of that. I mean, one of the things that we involved when I was taught at home, my mom would lay out a week worth of work that we would do. And we had the opportunity to do that work over the week. Many times I would finish up, sometimes Thursday, and then I would have Friday to basically do, something that I was interested in, focus on something that I wanted to do. And so that's how my mom kind of did it. And one of the ways that we're doing it with our kids, kind of we're over the hump right now. And so we've kind of had meetings with most of the children to see where they're at, where they're going to finish up for the school year. We talk about, kind of how we're going to plan to finish out the school year. And they're, taking some ownership over, their schedule, how they do it. But right now for my wife, she tends to focus, like Jamie mentioned, on the younger kids in the early morning, and then the older kids, if they have questions or need some additional help and guidance in the later part of the day. So, I think some days we'll do a very strict schedule, other days very relaxed. The only other thing I think, for me personally, most of the time we get up, we get dressed, we get our jobs done and our chores done. It's all part of our, homeschooling environment. But there are days where, everyone's in their pajamas, or, you have that flexibility to do what really needs to be done depending on the mood and the situation.
I think that you guys are bringing up actually maybe inadvertently answering one of the questions that we've gotten here. Krista is asking, do we have suggestions for an 8th or almost 9th grader that's a bit lazy and doesn't necessarily love learning? And I think that I'll give my 2 cents, and I really want to hear what you guys have to say. I think that this family has a wonderful opportunity in this moment, because they might have an opportunity now to dig in a little bit to understand why that love of learning isn't happening in maybe, I'm assuming this is in another school environment, but maybe there's some areas of delight that child could really start to dive into. I know I'll speak for my son. My son loves animals. He's not really loving reading, but if it's about animals, he will devour books.
Right.
He doesn't think of it as reading. He thinks of it as just being able to immerse himself in something he loves. So that's one thought. And maybe there's also some learning challenges that might be going on that you'd have time to dig into while they're home. What other thoughts do you all have for a child like this?
Well, I'll go ahead and start. This is something that I actually touch base with a lot of people on. And TJ, before I get to that, I love your idea of having this evaluation here near the end of the school year. because that's great. I'm going to do that with my kids. But something I get asked is the same thing. What do I do? Because a lot of these people are ready to go out and buy all this curriculum to get started. I say, wait, stop, back up a little bit. Encourage them to do a survey with their kids. Now, before last week, I would have said, go out for breakfast, sit down with them and have this survey ready in your head and start asking them questions. Keep them simple in the beginning. Things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite animal? But then get a little bit deeper. If we could travel anywhere in the world, first class, money is no object, where would you want to go? If we could go in a time machine back in time, you could be a fly on the wall and watch something great in history happen. What would you like to go be a part of? Find out those things. If there's somebody you can meet from the past, who would you like to meet? Well, there's your history and your science and your geography all rolled in one. I had one young mom tell me I think her child was 5th grade boy and she was taking him out of school. And she called me up the very next day and she said, thanks a lot, Samantha. And I said, what? She said, I did what you said and I did this survey. And because of you, I have to learn about Albert Einstein and the theory of relativity and snakes. And then I said, there you go. Go to the library. Now we go on the internet, start doing some research, study, and then find some cool projects to do, and do those things. And you are pulling in all of that and your reading is getting involved. And like you said, the only thing then you got to add in is your language arts and your math. Everything else is covered right now.
Right.
So that's a way to continue and get them excited.
Don't you guys agree? The best education I've ever had is homeschooling. Because honestly, I would never have spent this much time learning about snakes or mime or skydiving. I mean, definitely not skydiving, but I've learned so much because of my children and their passions. And that's been such a rich part. I think just a tiny segue here. I think sometimes if you are have had a career that was meaningful to you and you're thinking about maybe needing to augment that in order to home educate, sometimes I think the fear is it's going to be boring. It's going to really not be enriching or mentally stimulating. And I just want to speak to people and encourage them that homeschooling has been the most fascinating and rewarding career I've ever had. So just a little segue into that topic. As they're learning, you get to learn too about snakes and Albert Einstein and Stonehenge and all the rest, and birds. What do you want to say about that, Jamie?
I would just add, I endorse everything Samantha said. I want to add one thing, which is one of my soapboxes I love to get up on, which is reading aloud. I'm a huge advocate of reading aloud, and I do it with my high schoolers, okay? So this is not just something for your littles who can't read yet. This is a practice that I have done in my home every day as part of our school day, and I love it. I did exempt my senior and my junior this year, which made me cry, but I've got my two youngest, but I read to them, while they're still older, because there are so many studies to back this up, that it's so good for you educationally, even something about hearing it aloud. And it's also just a wonderful relational time. What I recommend is starting with something that everyone's going to just love and be completely like, read us another chapter, Mom. Try to find a book like that. Maybe something that was a book like that for you when you were a kid. I would recommend starting there. But one thing I have done as I've done this throughout the years is I will often choose a book that's just a little bit too challenging for them to read on their own. So that would be, they would be tripping up on, but when they hear me read it, they can get it. Right now we're almost done with Jane Austen's Emma, and there's a lot of crazy dialogue in there, but as I'm going through it, they understand it. They love it. So I've done a lot of really great books that way, really great literature. And let me tell you, my girls, they've done English grammar, plenty of English grammar, but I've never done a formal writing curriculum with them beyond just, having to do essays and things like that as part of their other subjects. And each one of them is a very natural writer. They write well, they compose well. And I just think it's because they've had this habit established of hearing good prose read aloud and reading it, and then they read it themselves as well. I think that's the most important thing for making good writers, is teach them grammar and read to them and get them reading. So if you have a reluctant reader, I always encourage reading aloud and try to choose
Yeah.
something they're really going to love.
There's so many helpful resources out there online as well for reading. And that is one question we had from people is, what kind of resources do you use, especially free ones, or do you even recommend to help keep things rolling while everybody is kind of taking a breath and adjusting to this? And that's just something I want to say again and again. We were talking, all four of us, before we came live, and I was mentioning that I am a veteran homeschooler, and yet this crisis is distracting. This crisis is distracting in lots of ways, emotionally, practically, logistically. And I want to encourage people to give themselves time. Okay, it's okay to let this take some time and to sort of see this as a test run in a lot of ways for a new family dynamic, for exploring some of these resources. We can just breathe and encourage one another that it's okay for it to take time. Absolutely. So that leads into, and let me just say, we have a list of resources that we're going to supply people after the Facebook. But are there some favorites that you all might have?
Well, anybody? I could mention a few favorites of my kids and our family. Over the years, we've used a lot of different resources just to, break up the homeschooling day. But one of the things, my kids, for instance, they love some of the activities and educational programs through PBS Kids. Another one is they really actually love doing is Teach Your Monster to Read. Great title, but they really enjoy some of the activities. And those are, obviously for younger kids. My older kids enjoy using Khan Academy. There's other activities and programs out there to give them particular skills. My kids use like the typing club.
Oh yeah.
They love using also Art for Kids Hub. That's a YouTube channel. And they can, when my son was drawing like The Mandalorian, so it's just great activities out there. And then a couple of my kids are using Duolingo. One of my children is trying to learn Chinese. Two of them are working on French and one's working on Spanish.
Oh my gosh.
That they're all fluent or anything like that. But
you've got a UN going on in your house.
Right, had an interest in, and there's just so many exciting places and things that you can do, in your homeschooling program. And they may only spend 2 or 3 times a week. They may only do it once a week, but it's something that they really enjoy. And those are some of the resources that we've used personally.
One of the things that I always tell people, especially if they've got young kids, a lot of people don't understand or have heard of lap books. And lap books are one of those great things that you can use as a resource. Google it. If you want to learn about chickens, just Google chicken lap book, and there'll be a free resource that will come up somewhere, and you can learn all about chickens or snakes or whatever it might be. And I've actually seen some kids that are in their middle school or early high school and do ancient Rome lap books, things like that, and a lot of fun that way. And then you've got this great little project that you can save. That's really nice.
I think that is so meaningful to have something physical and tangible that you can look back to it during this time. Lately I've been asking myself, what would my future self say to me now? When this event is over, because it will be over someday, what will I want to know that I personally have done, that we have as a family have done, that we as a community of homeschoolers or in your church have done? And I think that reassuring your children and them watching you really be at peace about the fact that we're going to be in the moment, we're going to embrace this time, is a part of what I'm hoping that we'll accomplish. And having things like you just mentioned, Samantha, with a lap book, or I heard another great idea, asking your child to journal about this time is a great way for your child to practice their writing skills. And someday that's going to be a family heirloom,
Right.
literally, that you look
Right.
back on. And the other thing I love about that is almost like foreshadowing in a scary story. When you're worried a character is not going to make it, but they say, years later, I reflected back on this. It's reassuring to go, honey, when we're all done with this time, won't it be fun to look back on this journal? Reminds everybody that this is temporary.
Right.
This is going
Right.
to change.
Mhm.
So one of the other things you mentioned, Jamie, in your piece is using this time to teach life skills.
Mhm.
So can you unpack that for us a little bit today?
Yeah, I mean, that's just again with the theme of use this unique opportunity, because I hope it's never coming again. But
Sure.
yeah, and this is, think about things that your kids will not get in school. I know they used to teach home ec and shop and things like that in school, but I'm not aware of many schools that do that anymore. And I think those are essential life skills that your kids are going to graduate and go off on their own and be like, why don't I know how to change a tire? Why don't I know how to budget? Why don't I know how to do my own laundry or cook a meal? And this is prime time for that. And of course you can use it to get stuff done around the house. But I don't.
That's our secret. It's really a chance.
We have to tell our secrets, Heather.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so even I think, if you've got one or both parents who are normally at work and are home, this is a good chance to impart some work skills. Maybe you know your way around some kind of software that would benefit your child to know, that you could teach them. Maybe you know carpentry, maybe you know how to sew. I mean, there's so many skills you can be thinking about imparting to your kids. Another thing I thought of after I published my piece was, it's a great time to think about things you wish the school were teaching, and you can teach those things. Anything like, grammar, how to diagram a sentence. I don't know if they do that in public school anymore. I love to diagram. I'm weird. I like to diagram.
Yes, you are weird. I love diagramming too, and my kids have assured me I'm weird.
Long division, I mean, that's a good skill. Character and religious education, I mean, that's huge, huge, huge. And I mean, don't think that, if your kids are acting up and fighting with each other in the house, that too, yes, that too is an educational opportunity.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Because that's where character education comes into play. And honestly, I don't know how, homeschooling has given me the chance to do that. That's where character meets real life. That's where this religious education meets real life, is when you and your sibling cannot get along. Let me tell you, and you might have to pause your school schedule and go
Yes.
and
Yes.
an hour of religious education in someone's bedroom. That's real life homeschool stuff right there. So just think of all these opportunities I think that that this unique time provides.
If you don't mind me segueing on that just real quick, I want to hear what you're going to add to that, Samantha. But I think that you help me remember the meaningful moment you have here for your kids to build relationships with each other. Because if they are normally in school, they're not having to work through these conflict, these challenges, because they're away. We had a parlor in our previous home, and my two oldest were like oil and water for the longest time. We would spend hours in the parlor working on their communication. And they point back to that because they're very close now. That was not written in my schedule for the day. I can promise you, not on the schedule. But it was very, very meaningful part of our lives together. So I want to really affirm what you're saying about that. Samantha, what were you going to say about that?
Right. I was going to say the same thing, that this is a time to encourage. That's, it's always my goal to do that. But right now we need it more than ever, because we're all on Facebook. We see all of the memes that are out right now, and the comments that our friends are making who are public school people, who are like, I'm all ready to expel my children, and, the teacher's drunk. And that's, it's funny, but it's also very sad. That and I pray that this is a time that they're going to be able to reach out to each other and make those connections again, strong family connections, and to get simply back to the basics of life. Which brings me to one other thing we talked about at the right before when this started. We were talking about this simplifying, and we've been dealing with the busyness of life. This is what we're so used to, is the busyness. We are overwhelmed.
Yep.
Now, and we're always trying to catch up. And now here we are. The world as we knew it has now changed. It's changed. For many of us, though, we're finding that it's really hard to realize the opportunity that we have. So our thing is this: are we going to look for new distractions while we're stuck in our homes with our family, or we're going to find other places to go and be distracted, or are we going to go to this crossroad that we're at right now and decide we don't want to be hurried and overwhelmed and distracted anymore. Instead, we want peace and we want rest and we want depth with each other, and don't be in such a rush to try to make things work, these schedules and all of this stuff. I think God's giving us a chance to say, you know what, you need to breathe, you need to find joy, and you need to sit down and play cards with your kids and just laugh again and relax and look for that hope and again, that big connection with them. So, you've got this chance to make a huge leap with your kids. This is, to me, I guess I'm always one looking for the silver lining.
Yes.
I always am. That's my goal, always. And that's my silver lining right now. I want to connect with my family. Through this crazy. I want to connect with them. So.
Yeah, and I
think that's a really, really good thing that you've brought up, Samantha, because, so easy, I think, in this day and age for all of us to, many people have, their internet's still working. They could sit their kids down and just, do something, put something on. Older kids could be distracted with their cell phones or on their social media. And one of the things that we've tried to do as a family, typically this is done over the summer, but I think it's a really good thing that you could do now, is we would have each of our kids maybe write down 5 or so things that they'd be interested in doing. And they would write it on a little piece of paper. We would put it into a jar. And then we would just kind of randomly reach in and do that activity together. Now, not all these things are on these lists that we've done, but we've done a treehouse where we built a treehouse together. We have taken some chicks and we made our incubator and we actually watched some chicks hatch. Couldn't do that necessarily, or we couldn't keep them in our current homeowners association since they don't allow chickens. But, there's just so many different things that you could get out and do. Just because we are in a very unique time in our history, doesn't mean that you can't walk around the neighborhood or explore the woods behind your house or take a walk. We're very fortunate we have a bike path nearby that we can just go out and walk, just together, spending some time and, allowing your kids to have some input on some things that they'd be interested in doing. And it may take them a few days or even weeks to really look forward to doing some of these things.
Yes.
But I think it is something that we do enjoy doing, and my kids enjoy it when we play, even when we don't finish the Monopoly game or something else happens to interrupt that. But I think it's a really good thing to think about during this time as well.
I think that's such a great way for us to wrap up, really, in that this is a season of opportunity, and it's also a season of grace, because when all these things we're talking about, especially this last bit of relationships, of opportunities, I don't want people to walk away feeling like now that their kids are home and everybody's not sunshine and fairy dust, if everyone's not feeling that way initially, that they failed.
Right.
This is a time when you can work through those things and find those positive connections. And that may take time. It may take conflict. It may take, people rubbing each other the wrong way because you're not used to spending all day together. Yep. All of that is productive. All of that is a part of the relationship building that we homeschoolers struggle with all the time. So I don't either want people to feel like, oh, we homeschool, so everything, eventually becomes easy. It's relationships are work.
Yes,
but all of that we've talked about today, all that we've talked about is an investment, and you'll be grateful that you made it when it's done. So I'm so grateful for the investment of time that each of you have given to us, both all of you watching us, Jamie, Samantha, and TJ, so much wisdom to share. We are HSLDA, TJ and I. We represent the people who are here to help you. So please feel free to call us and let us know how we can help. If you have more questions that we didn't address, please feel free to post those and we will continue to interact. I know we had a question about iPads in New York City. We'll definitely answer those, and we'll provide a list of free resources that are our favorites. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Friday, 2 o'clock, when we have another Facebook Live about cabin fever, ideas for ways to address being home and building those relationships. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you again.